everyone. This is Karma Baughman. Thank you to all of you for joining us this morning on the Untracked webinar. We are in part 5 of the book and approaching the end. I think I counted this morning like 8 more chapters, and I would anticipate we'll probably finish up with this sometime before Christmas. Again, thank you to each of you for taking the time out of your Sunday mornings to visit with us, talk with us, hear some of our thoughts, hopefully hear some of your thoughts as well. We certainly appreciate each of you. Before we get into the content, logistics, for those of you that may not be familiar with the platform, top right is a chat box. It's a moderated chat box, which simply means when you type something in at the bottom of that box and click send, it comes to Ben and myself, and we will certainly respond accordingly. If you'd rather participate verbally, you're more than welcome to do so. Below the video is the Ask a Question button. You can click on that. And again, Ben and I will be prompted, and we'll turn the mic over to you when appropriate to hear your thoughts. And if you're joining us by phone this morning, the way to participate, if you'd like to share your thoughts, is hit *5 on your phone, and that will bring up a prompt again to Ben and I, and then we will turn the mic over to you. I think that's it as far as logistics. If there's any technical issues that you experience, don't hesitate to put it in the moderated chat box. Click send, and again, I'll take note of those, and hopefully we can get those resolved. But I think we're good to go. So with that, let's talk about the 2 chapters in the book called Untracked Era and Sunrise Vista. Now, originally we were going to skip over Untracked Era. When I looked at it over this past week, I thought, I really like this chapter. Maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think it has great content. I think it's just another way to listen in on Ben's heart, as well as maybe challenge us, or maybe even give us more insight into some of the things that we may be feeling, but put words to it. I think this chapter provides that. I'm noticing, I think our videos are going off and on, so hopefully that doesn't create an issue. As long as we come back on, I think we're good to go. What I liked about the Untracked Era chapter, not only does it share a bit more about where we are in the era of things. He mentions in the chapter how we're leaving the modern era behind and coming into this new era that we're not sure yet what to call that, and talks a bit about what the old era was like and what this new era is like. The old era being, how do I describe it? There's certain things that we've done in the past that no longer work anymore. So that was the era of familiarity, maybe the era of follow these rules and regulations, if you will. I may not be putting that in quite the right words, but that no longer works for many people. We're wanting more. We want to experience more, and there's something inside of us that's stirring. And I think he does a good job in this chapter of kind of explaining maybe where that stirring is coming from. I'm going to read the last paragraph of that chapter after he spends some time describing maybe what he describes as climbing over the wall into this new era. He says, "I'm one of those who snuck over the wall. I can't seem to stay away anymore. Its elixir has beguiled me with taste and sights and sounds and smells that beckon me irresistibly to their delights. I'm about to cross over for good, but there is still a longing to bring as many as I can with me on my continued forays, so they can see wide-eyed again as well." I love how that's described and the words used there. And I think it also, especially that last sentence, describes why we're doing these webinars. We want to bring along as many people as possible, people that have that longing or have that stirring inside of them, that there's more, there's something different now, or we want to be more relevant, we want to make more of an impact. And that's why we love you joining us on these Sunday mornings to be a part of this, climbing over the wall and going into this new era with maybe something that looks different. Although we're struggling a bit with what that looks like, I think we're in the middle of that, at least, and joining the journey. I didn't share this with Ben earlier. I just thought of it recently. When I read this chapter, especially this morning when I reread the chapter, it reminded me of an incident in my life back in high school where I did attend a private Christian school my last 2 years of high school. But when I graduated from that high school, there was an incredible stirring within me to get out of this sheltered culture where everybody around me believes the same thing I do. They think the same things I think, and it wasn't. It, I'm not. I don't know if I could put into words back then what I was feeling, but I knew I wanted to be in an environment where people were different than me. Because I wanted to make sure what was inside of me, what I believed in, was real. I felt like being in that what I would call sheltered culture. I It was too sheltered, and I wasn't sure if what was inside of me was real enough to stand the test of being around people that were different than me. So there was a stirring inside of me to get out of that and to really live out what was inside of me and see if it was really real, which I think maybe is a little bit at least of what he's describing in this chapter. Let's make sure that what we believe in is very real and makes a difference not only to us but to those around us. So that may have gone off on the tangent there, but I also liked the questions that were in the discussion ebook or discussion questions ebook for this chapter. And I thought the first question was very interesting. As he shares in this chapter what he's walked, the question is, have you had thoughts or doubts that you didn't exercise or express, I'm sorry, express because you were afraid of the reactions of others? And I talked with Ben about this, I think it was yesterday morning a bit, so I thought that was such an interesting question, and my response was, yeah, I certainly have. And I'm not sure if afraid was quite the right word. I think sometimes how we respond is based on what we know we may have to deal with when others hear our thoughts or our actions. So it becomes, have we had thoughts or doubts that we didn't express because we didn't want to deal with the reaction? And that's even true today for myself, where I know people might think a little bit differently than and I don't want to put up with whatever may come back at me, so I don't express it. I think there's a time to do that, and there may be a time not to do that. I think that's where wisdom comes in to play a lot. Then the other two questions for this chapter is, what do you think of the pace of change that we are seeing today, and does it feel out of control or safe? And in response to that third question, does it feel out of control or safe, the two words that came to mind was, it's exhilarating and it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So both of those at the same time, and I kind of deal on the technical world, which kind of is the same thing. It's exhilarating and it's exhausting, but it also applies to what we're talking about this morning. So I don't know, Ben, if you want to add anything to that. I kind of rambled a bit about introducing this, so go ahead.
Great, actually great thoughts, because when you start dealing in this whole idea that we're moving to a new era, it is a rambling kind of thing. It goes from thought to thought to thought to thought, and as you were expressing on this whole idea of is it difficult sometimes to talk to others about the thoughts that come when you're beginning to move in freedom to a new era and a new way of thinking? It is difficult. I think of many times, and even today, there are just time after time after time with different people, I just do not express my thoughts, and I long to express them, but the problem is that it's kind of like a situation I have with a very close family member. In that situation, um, I've longed many times to express my thoughts over the years, countless years, and it comes down to this. At one point, when expressing my thoughts, and I thought I was doing it in such a way that this person could handle it and maybe just move them toward this kind of thinking. At one point, all of a sudden, they just shook their head, and with a panicked look in their eyes, they said, "I can't go there. I can't go there." And I could tell immediately that I had broken the barrier that was safe for them. It was It was a barrier that they had up. It was confines. It was a fence around them that protected them in their way of thinking that they had thought for so long. And they couldn't take this whole thought process that maybe there was a different way of thinking about it. And somehow, because it somehow destroyed everything else in their life that they had considered safe around them, their way of thinking and their way of expressing it, and the way they did church, the way they thought about God, everything was involved in that. And it was almost like they totally panicked and they just had to go quiet and try to soothe the situation. And so many times they faced that I can't name the number of times. It's on a constant basis. With Facebook friends, I often will hear their thoughts and I just want to almost scream into the conversation. No, no, you're not seeing it. You're just talking the old, the things that you grew up with, that you're safe with, but they're taking you in a direction that you wouldn't want even if you could see it. But I don't say anything because I'm aware of how difficult it will be for them to hear those words and how angry it may even make them. And from a pastoral side, I can't name the number of times when people just literally walked away from us. People that we thought were friends and close to us because where we were going wasn't safe to them. It wasn't easy for them. It wasn't what they had always been taught or always grown up with. It was like it touched on barriers that they couldn't let go. How interesting it was. And this whole idea of entering a new era is a fascinating, fascinating thing anyway, because we can look back at it historically, and I won't take much time on that, but it it comes, it seems, in approximately 500-year periods, and we can go back and we can look even before the time of Christ to the 500-year periods that predate Christianity, because I'm only talking Christianity at this point as a religion, and the era change that's taking place there, but it's taking place across the culture, and we can look at it historically for the culture, we can look at it for the politics, we can look at it for uh, the corporate structures, the education structures, and we can see the changes that take place within an era, and we can then see the changes that all of a sudden, when we look at it historically, and it's not all of a sudden while we're going through it, but as we look at it historically, this almost cataclysmic changes. And 500 years ago, we see those cataclysmic changes that came out of the Great Reformation, and it came out of the Enlightenment period. So across the cultural areas, the areas that affect our sciences, they affect our arts, they affect all kinds of things, and they affect who we are as people and how we think as people. And that's approximately 500 years ago that we entered this era that became, in our lifetimes, the modern era. And now we're moving in a cataclysmic way to a new era that we haven't named yet because we always name in reverse. We always name looking back. It's too hard to name going forward because we don't know exactly what's going to happen as we go forward. It's an exciting time, but difficult, and always, always turmoil when we get to these cataclysmic times. Never historically is it without turmoil. The times before this, the splitting of the East and West Church, I'm talking simply from Christianity, that happened 500 years before the Reformation. And what came out of that, and then 500 years before that, as the Roman Empire is falling, and the church is now responding to that. And we have the breakup in thought processes between the Western Church, the Orthodox Church, and the Eastern Church. So you now have three separations to what we know today as things like the Coptic Christianity, which would be the Oriental uh, uh, branch of the church, what we would sometimes term the Oriental branch, and then you have the Eastern Constantinople branch that formed and thought at that time, and we had the Western branch. That they all broke apart at that point in some senses, but the real breaks came completely later as we formed, and Western Christianity became something of its own and became a strong branch of the church. But we see those changes in those times that take place, and we're in one of those times now. What an incredible time to live, but it's not an easy time necessarily to have good conversations because it's during a time when we step over the fence of the era that we live in and move into this new untracked era, this new one that our thoughts are changing entirely in the way we think about things again, and the structures around us are changing, and the institutions don't fit where we're going anymore because they're simply tools of the eras that we live in. And now it becomes difficult to talk to those that are in the old era still living there because they're holding on to the safety of that. They're holding on to the thought processes of that. And we find it politically, we find it religiously, we find it corporately. So the changes that are taking place, and Carmen and I were talking yesterday about some of those changes that happen in the corporate world, in the education world, that are the same types of things are happening right now. And the old era is the propagators of the old era, and those that are saying we've got to stay there and we've got to return to that, um, are yelling, we can't do it this new way. It doesn't work. It won't ever work. And we hear that. So we're
Couple
entering a new era. Go
couple
ahead.
of comments that have come in. One is when you talk about it not being safe, it reminds me of, I believe it's the lion in the Chronicles of Narnia, where he's described as he's not safe but good.
Yes. Oh,
And then
yes.
I'll throw
What?
in a second
What?
comment really quick. Then go ahead.
And let me just, within that, if I can just say really quick,
Sure.
I've got to say that has got to be one of my absolute favorite analogies of my life is the out of the Chronicles of Narnia. As we started reading to our kids at 3 and 4 years of age, and he may not be safe, but he's good. And that's where we're going again. Go ahead, hon.
And the other comment that came in also pertaining to the question, does it feel out of control or safe? This person describes that it's a learning experience. Not out of control as a good skier isn't out of control when skiing well. I think it's sort of like on the edge of control. It's well put.
I like that. That's extremely well put. And I, it doesn't feel out of control to me, but it is this this whole. I like the analogy of skiing because I'm not a great skier by any means, but I like to ski, and so I've done it a few times recently. Picked it back up again, and hadn't done it for a lot of years, and the last couple of years I've done it a couple times, and I love coming down the slopes, but it's a bit frightening for an old guy going down the slopes anymore. I don't like to fall as much as well, I don't know that I ever liked to fall, but it didn't scare me as much as maybe it does now to thought of falling headlong down the slope and rolling uncontrollably, with skis flying. But I still love the feel of it. And I love the feel of being able to turn with the new type of skis they have now, different than the old ones I used to use. And I feel like I've still got that control and I can come down. I'm not going to try those Black Devil diamonds or whatever right now, but I like the feeling on the blues that I can gain control with that edge, but it doesn't feel entirely safe. I like that. That's a great analogy. Any other thoughts or questions before I move on with this? I can talk about this all day, but I'm never sure if I just am overdoing the point. So help me out on this, because I do want to move to the next chapter, which I think is the heart of it always. Just a
I'm not
moment.
seeing any other comments come in. If you have other comments, feel free to let us know. I think we'll go ahead and move into Sunrise Vista and certainly address any comments that may come in.
This was life changing to me. When I move into this whole Sunrise Vista chapter, um, even though it took place in '93, and I can tell you all kinds of things through a lifetime that led up to this moment, but this was like a turning point moment for me because we're pastoring, and um, I fit in with the way things are. I've be, I'm becoming quite successful at it in many ways, and uh, I'm losing some of the focus that's been a part of my heart of why I was even become a pastor. And I realize I'm losing that focus to some degree. And in the busyness of now, um, somehow in the culture, becoming successful in that, I'm building a big church, and at least little from my little viewpoint in a fairly rural setting, and the church is growing, and it's the church where it's at in the community in some ways, and I'm at this meeting, and has at the end of the meeting, which I've nearly slept my way through. For all of you that slept through church services, I was tired that night. I had driven a long ways to get there, and the speaker of the night was not necessarily one that kept my attention. And I think I slept through most of it. I had one of those head nodding moments where my head jerked a lot, trying to come to my senses and stay awake. But when it was all over, I felt like something compelled me just to go to the front, to the altar of that church, and get on my knees. At that time, and there's a lot to that story that I'm not telling, and because it's not necessary to this piece, but um, it's where I felt this vision from God, and I'm not given to visions, and I'm not given to. Um, I am given to alone times and feeling like I hear the voice of God, but when I tell you that, I don't mean some audible voice. I just am a believer that we can be quiet with him, and he often speaks his heart to us, and he speaks through our own hearts. But this particular night, it was like a true vision for me. And as we walked together in that vision, I felt like I was walking directly with Jesus, and in that first half of that, I was with him. Now people couldn't see me, but they saw him. But I was there in reality, and I watched him because that's what I felt like I was there for, was to be an observer of him, just watching him work. And as I watched him work, and he carried in groceries, he fixed cookies for a young boy whose mother was still at work after he came home from school because she was a single mom. His mediated quarrels, and he went out and spent his money on appliances for another couple, and as he did more things than I can name because you can read the chapter yourself, and there's many more than that that was in that vision. I realized, oh my goodness, this is his heart. I love him. It was amazing. It was just kind of one of those things where it was, and then everything changed. We went right back to where we had started. And he was still there, and I was there. I was still invisible to the people. The difference was he became invisible. And I realized his invisibility. Instead of a body now, he was simply the gray matter of a brain to me. That's how I saw him. And so I realized he was there. And as we went back through everything, I realized the only thing missing was he had no body. And you read it, so it was a horrible experience in many ways for me. I was like, I wanted to yell, just a minute. I can't, I can't be there for you. I don't understand. I can't get there for you. I wanted to help them myself, but I remained invisible and I remained unable to do anything because he was showing me something and I knew it. I knew it. I knew it before. And I just hung my head in shame because I was leading a congregation of people and realized that I wasn't leading them to this. And he just ends it by saying, then where's my body? Why are they not doing what I'm doing? I'm here bringing salvation to every person. And your view of salvation and my view of salvation, of course, if we grew up in the church, was basically give your life to Jesus, and that was salvation. And I'd grown to see it way differently than that. And especially here, I realized that the reality of it was making life like heaven for every person in this world that he could. And my job was to be his hands and his feet and his eyes and his ears. And not to just be another cerebral person talking on Sunday morning. And it wasn't like this was hard vision for people to see and understand. They loved it. It was that the institutions that we had built in the modern era of the church, and even before that, because these had come through several eras of the church, the institutions we now had, were stopping us from simply being the hands and feet and eyes and ears. Jesus everywhere. Hun, I'm going to explain that using those two diagrams. And they're diagrams that a long time ago, I'd say that 10 years. But she's going to shift over to those diagrams and
Okay.
we're going to go from there. Let's try that.
All right. All right. We're going to try this. Hopefully it will come across okay on your end. If it doesn't, we'll try and come back without too much interruption. Let me change your window. Your screen's going to change a bit here. I think the videos will go. Actually, honey, if you could turn off your video for a little bit.
I would gladly
And I'm
turn
just
off
going
my
to go
video.
see if I
Try
can
that.
share this document. You still should be able to hear us okay.
Okay. And what you see is just a simple diagram. And it's a diagram that expresses what has stopped us from the vision. And it was so frustrating because I could never change the way this was from within. And I realized that the era we were in, the modern era, and the institutions that were involved in it were so built this way that they couldn't be changed readily from within. So what you're seeing is the blue circle is how we do church. And that is, it's really a blue circle of Christianity or the religion of Christianity, and then I didn't differentiate between denominations and the differences in how they do church, or the Eastern Church or the Western Church or the Coptic Church. I didn't differentiate because I wanted this to be simple. But the blue circle is the way we do things as a church or as the churches of Christianity, as the institutions of Christianity. And what has happened is over the eras that have formed, um, Jesus is within that how we do church. We bring him in because it is like we own him as he is a Christian. Jesus is the forerunner, or in our culture, the way we've done it, he is the founder of Christianity, the religion of Christianity. Now, without going into an explanation why I don't believe that, and you've heard me talk about those things, I just want you to see the picture that's there. And then what happens then, how we do church with Jesus inside, is what becomes the main focus. It always brings us back to what are we going to do with our nickels and noses. If we're going to survive as a religion, we have to have people coming into our institutional structure, and we have to have them supporting that institutional structure. So we have to have them. So how we follow Jesus then becomes a program of the church. And just the other night, we experienced this. We were out um, and about town, and there were two churches, and both of them I would consider good churches. So I don't want to discredit them, and I will not name them, but one was out giving away donuts, the other was out giving away free cider, and in one of the downtown neighborhoods of Denver, and we were walking and going to grab a supper, and we were walking out to enjoy the art because it's art walk night there, and as we're we're getting the brochures from the churches as they're giving us free donuts and free cider. Um, it was all about come to us because we have solutions and answers different. We realize you're not going to church because you don't like what church is about, but we're different in the way we do church, in the way we are church. So come into us on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or whatever it was. And then they gave us how they follow Jesus. And they did there were several different good things they did. One was a feeding program. One was there was a good works program. So they have a Sunday a year where they just go out and do good works in their neighborhoods, and they have all kinds of projects planned. There was all kinds of good things, but notice something. How we follow Jesus was still a program of the church. Now, in the whole of this, I want you to see that what we've done is we've forced it into wrong priorities for us. So we have to come to the institution for this. Can you take us to the second diagram, sweetheart?
We're going to try.
Okay, there it is. I want you to see something, and maybe you can make that diagram smaller like you did the other one, hon, so we can see the whole of it there, because I know I only
Something
see
wrong.
part of it. There we go. It's
Whoops, wrong
starting to
way.
move down. Okay, and I want you to notice something. The way it was at its very beginning is really interesting. Before it becomes a religion of Christianity, and before we have all of our institutions involved in it, I want you to see how it begins, because the big circle now is Jesus, and the early church doesn't focus on how we do church or how to keep the institutions going because that's unimportant to them. And so what happens is in this whole picture of, wow, Jesus is changing everything in the way we view life. what becomes important to them is what is now a program of the church. How we join Jesus in what he's doing is the main focus. How do we join him in what he's doing? And so they're not thinking in terms of how do we bring people into the church, but they're thinking in terms of, wow, Jesus has befriended people that are on the fringes who need him. He's taking care of needs everywhere. He's loving people. He's caring for them. How do we join him in doing that? In the earliest part of the church, that's what you watch as they go out, is they just simply join Jesus in what he's doing. And then that third circle, how we do church, is this interesting piece that comes out of the whole of the other two. And that how we do church then is comes in, and you hear it in the author of Hebrews saying, we shouldn't forsake us getting together, you guys. So let's not do that. Let's find ways to get together. And let's find ways to join together in joining Jesus in what he's doing. So you see this right priority structure and how the, what's happening today and has been happening for hundreds of years and taken us down this path led us to another way of doing it, and it becomes a program of those institutions. And now we're trying to leave that behind and move back to this, just simply joining Jesus in what he's doing. The When we tried to do this, the other diagram kept us from it. It had to be a program of the church, and we kept coming back to how do we bring people in on Sunday morning. And it took our resources, and it took our energies, and it took our time. And we never got to doing this, just the simplicity of this, joining Jesus in what he's doing, and getting together in that process and saying, oh, how do we do this together to make it even better? Any comments or questions? I realize we're getting to this, and maybe you can move it back to us now, hon. And
Okay.
so, see, or any comments or questions here?
We have a couple of comments towards the questions from the Discussion Questions ebook. The questions for this particular chapter were, what is your inside response to the vision in this chapter? And does joining Jesus in what he was doing appeal to you? And a couple of responses to that. One is, I love your vision comparing life with Jesus with life without Jesus. It reminds me of It's a Wonderful Life, with the comparison between life with George Bailey and without George Bailey. The vision without Jesus is like Pottersville. It's the same town without charity, compassion, and empathy. That's a great analogy.
That's an incredible analogy from a movie that's so familiar to most of us. And what an incredible analogy it is. Yes.
And then the response to the second question is, this person is finishing a book called The Book of Joy. It's based on interviews with the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The last few sentences of the book about joy practices says that ultimately joy is not something to learn, it is something to live. And our greatest joy is lived in deep, loving, and generous relationships with others.
Mm-hmm. How incredible that is. And these comments came in an email that I just got right before this, our webinar. And I love the comments. And if I can say, they're from Paul in Texas. And I love his thought processes and thinking. And what an incredible thing it is to live this life of joy. It's a freeing thing to step into the new era. It's not like the old, where it feels like it encapsulates us and puts us into um, a mold that we have to fit in, but somehow it doesn't quite fit joy or life. are living. We're living out our faith, and it just doesn't quite fit that. It just feels like we're doing something like we're swimming in place or running in place, dog paddling when we would be swimming, or I'm not sure, but it doesn't feel like we're doing what we ought to do to make this world like heaven. And wow.
We had another comment pertaining to the questions, and I see another one also just came in. As far as their response, their inside response to the vision, they say, "This is beautiful and I love this. It isn't something that is so big and impossible. It's daily living with others and reaching out to those around us." And then the response about, it continues on, the no body side of the vision makes me sad but very aware of what we need to be. It's simple. It's not complex.
No. I think I love that about it. That almost brings me to tears because um, I believe in this simplicity. I believe it is just that. It's living out who you are in the best way possible, selflessly, by simply responding to the heart of Jesus, responding to the heart of God Himself in our living by giving to others who have simple needs. Not so simple in the sense that they're not real. Some of them may be complex. They're very difficult for those involved. But for us, it's just a daily living thing. Somehow I can bring good news to the people around me. And I'm doing exactly what Jesus is doing. He's acting as the brain. He's not here in the sense of physical body. We're that. When he was here, scriptures say he was the visible manifestation of the invisible God. And today we can say, and I hope they put something like this on my gravestone. He was the visible manifestation of Jesus. I don't know if they can say anything. I don't know if I that almost feels arrogant to me, but I just want to somehow make him visible through my hands, my feet, my eyes, my ears, my mouth. I want him to become visible to others, not through preaching.
We have another comment that kind of goes along with what you're sharing, Ben. And this is a perspective on the diagram of how we join Jesus. I'd like to see the diagram with how we join Jesus, or maybe Jesus as enclosing many churches and even people from other religions and even no religion. That's a great idea. And I think Ben and I talked a bit about this yesterday morning when we were reviewing these diagrams. I almost wanted to take that of the second diagram, wanted to take that centerpiece out of there, how we do church. Maybe just because the annotations that go with church, but it just becomes people working together, including those from other religions, or maybe even those that think that are without religion. That's beautiful.
Wow. And hon, I'm not sure. I think I just want to express this for those out there. Is there a way on the website, perhaps, if somebody wants to have those diagrams or play with those diagrams? There's certainly nothing sacred about those diagrams. If you want to play with them or whatever, we can maybe put a link to them or put them on the next email out or something,
Yeah.
and play with them all you want. As far as making them clear, they were just something I did years ago because I was trying to just simply show clearly what where I wanted to go, where I wanted us to go in this whole thing. And I was doing it from inside at that time. But I would like to, relook at those as well from this perspective, this comment that's come in, and any of you can work on them and play with them and think through how we can make this work.
And we can certainly make those available. I think what we'll do is when the link goes out to the recorded webinar, if you go to that link, I'll include, you'll see the normal thing of the webinar, the video. Underneath the video, there'll be 2 links to 2 different Word documents that will be those diagrams. And you're welcome to download those from there.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments before we kind of wrap up this one? We certainly appreciate the interaction with you, whether it comes through email prior or in the midst of doing the webinar. We love the discussion, the thoughts, the ideas, and the questions that come across.
Thanks again, everybody.
Next week, it looks like the next chapter is Don't Look Back. So again, watch your email and we'll be more specific in which chapters it will be covering next week as well. So thank you again to all of you for joining us. We appreciate you. Have a good rest of the Sunday and a good week as well.